I was born when I was very young. I was born in Buffalo, New York in 1949, and I lived there till I was about 14 when my parents moved to LA. My grandparents on my mother's side came from Ukraine, and they were born in 1880 and came to the United States in 1910, and they lived in Buffalo. And my father's side of the family came from Titusville, Pennsylvania, and they were there for about 3 or 4 generations before my father. And my father worked at a store in Buffalo, a retail store, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. And we lived directly across the street from public school, 66, which is where I went to grade school. I have a sister, Sharon, who is still alive, and she is about 70. And I have a brother, Stephen, who died last year. So those are my siblings. We were a poor family. So my father worked. He didn't make a lot of money. I don't think that my mother was not really happy about that. And my in-laws, I think, looked down on my father because he didn't make as much money as they did. There were times where we actually didn't have food in the house, and my grandfather and grandmothers would bring some food over. It was actually very similar in some ways to the circumstances that my wife Diane grew up in. I had 2 parents, but they argued a lot. My father and mother were Jewish, as were all of my mother's and father's siblings, but religion was never a big part of their lives.
Are there other things, maybe in particularly in your childhood, maybe youth, that made you feel most alive?
When I was about 10 or 11, I took a big interest in classical music, and I used to ride the bus to the library in downtown Buffalo and listen to different types of classical music, particularly Rachmaninoff, which I still like to this day. I first saw Diane in 1971, and I saw her sitting alone in a plant physiology laboratory class. I didn't actually meet her for another year. I found her very attractive, but I didn't get to see her till the next year when I was late for my lab in genetics class, and Diane was also late. And this professor said to me, "Who is your lab partner?" And I turned around and Diane was there, and I said, "She is." That did not endear me to her, but she became my lab partner, and over the months we really got to know each other. So in 1971, when she turned 21, and then right around that time she met me, and we started dating after a few months of being lab partners. I could tell from being around her every day that she was really an outstanding person. Of course, she was very pretty, and she had she was very nice. Everybody liked her. Nobody had anything bad to say about her. And she was very conscientious about her work. And I have to say, I probably did take advantage of her. And she did a lot of the what's called scut work in the genetics lab. But she was really fun to be around, and was great company to go out for dinner. We both shared a love for natural foods and whole foods, and also Mexican food. My education, I went to 1 year of high school in Buffalo, New York before we moved to LA. And then in LA, I ended up graduating from Hollywood High School. But while I was in high school, I was in the ROTC, and I wasn't particularly an academic star in high school. I did a lot of reading on my own. While I was in ROTC, I also joined the Civil Air Patrol, and we flew out of Van Nuys, California at the airport. After I graduated from high school, I joined the Air National Guard, and I was in there for 6 years. I became a flight engineer. And then there were some really harrowing flights, and I just decided to change my career, and I trained as an X-ray technician. And I did that for the remaining time in the Air National Guard. The first 2 years I went to Santa Monica College, which is a junior college. And I was there because my grades weren't top notch. So they wanted me to, they wouldn't accept me to UCLA. Actually, I was much the better for it because at Santa Monica College, I had all my, the lower level math, chemistry, physics, and biology. And I took 2 years of calculus at Santa Monica College by this really brilliant teacher who did not have a PhD, had a master's degree, but he was an excellent communicator. And his name was Clarence Claridge, and he taught me 4 semesters of calculus. So I did all my integral and differential calculus at Santa Monica College, and it was a really great help because when I left Santa Monica College, I went to Cal State San Bernardino, which is now Cal State University San Bernardino, and finished my undergraduate work. So at first year of grad school, I was at the University of California, Riverside in plant physiology, working on a PhD. And then I decided I really wanted to go into more microbiology, immunology than plant physiology. So I switched to UCLA, and I was in their microbiology, immunology PhD program. And while I was there, I also applied to medical school and was accepted. In UCLA, I completed my PhD in 1977, and I started medical school in 1976. So I wrote my PhD dissertation while I was in medical school. Fortunately, since I had already been in the Air National Guard, I got a position in the Air Force Reserves, and they paid for my medical school. So it was really great. So I got to go to UCLA on their dime. Really nice discoveries came out of UCLA at that time. So I was happy to be in that area and to really know some really smart people. But I knew when I was in grad school that I definitely, absolutely, positively did not want a career in academia. So I looked more on clinical medicine or maybe research medicine, but not in an academic setting. Then it turns out that after my residency, I actually went to work at a pharmaceutical company where I was for many years. So I was not a non-academic position, but working for a pharmaceutical company is very much like being in the military. The different uniform, but the same command structure. I went into the military in my residency program, at an Air Force center that had an academic program. So in addition to internship and residency, they had an academic aspect, and I got to do some research while I was in the Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi. At that time, Diane and I lived in Biloxi, Mississippi, and although we lived on an Air Force base in Biloxi, so it's geographically in Mississippi, but it's totally not in Mississippi. I didn't have any flying responsibilities because at that point I was no longer a flight engineer. I was a medical officer.
But then your studies went into the medical field. What caused this shift in your focus, would you say?
In grad school at UCLA in the microbiology immunology department, I did some volunteer work at the Jules Stein Eye Institute, which was on UCLA's property adjacent to the hospital. I kind of liked it. I liked the work that was being done there. I thought it was very interesting. I had no interest in being an ophthalmologist whatsoever, but I did really like being around in the medical setting. So while I was in grad school, I applied to medical school, and fortunately I got in. And fortunately, I didn't have to worry about the cost of medical school either because the military again picked it up.
If I could stick with the medical field for a little bit, Don, what are some of the things that you've done in your medical career that you're most proud of?
Sure. Well, I would say that first of all, I'm proud that I can't think of one instance where I've done something because of a motive of making more money. So I've never ordered a test or ordered a drug or accepted money from a pharmaceutical company or anything that strictly for monetary reasons. I've never done that. I've always looked at the people, the patients, as individuals that came to me for help, and I never thought about money. So I'm very proud about that. When I went into the military for my internship and residency, I did some research on artificial blood, on blood substitutes. I'm very proud of that. Another discovery I'm proud of, I came up with the concept of being able to translate the results from a functional MRI. I originated the concept, which is now very well accepted. I did some, I thought were really groundbreaking experiments at a local hospital showing that, and unsponsored by drug companies or anybody, just on my own, I was able to show that by mapping where people had activation in their brain during the functional MRI while they were thinking about specific things like faces, objects, and positions, that there was, you could actually interpret what they were thinking about by looking at their MRI. And I got awarded patents on that. And then subsequently, it was verified by a number of different institutions in Germany and in Japan, where they replicated that work. And now it's accepted.
Go back to your family a little bit and your children. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
My youngest child is Brittany Kaylin Marks Bentley, and she's married and she is a veterinary doctor, and she has a very good heart. And when she was 5 years old, she said she wanted to be a veterinarian. And so she knew back then and did years of dog training. But even back when she was 5, she had this like uncanny ability to communicate with animals. And she and her husband live in Aurora, Colorado, and she makes a really good contribution to her community because she cares for the welfare of the dogs that she's entrusted.
And you have a couple of other children too, Doug?
We have two sons. We have Brandon Marks, who is our first child, and he has a computer company that he started when he was about 20. And he has lots of employees and has lots of contracts, and he's his international business, and he's a good solid person. And he has two children who live in Randolph. And our younger son is Travis Marks, and he has advanced degrees from Fairleigh Dickinson in financial analysis. So he is a very responsible person, and he has 3 children, and he and his wife live in Chester in their house, and they have 2 children. I'm sorry, Brandon has 3 children, Travis has 2 children.
What are some other things that might have given you a lot of, personal rewards? And we're not talking monetary, of course, but rewarding things in your life that stand out for you, Don?
I would say participation in activism, because I believe in universal health care. That other countries like European countries and Canada have that experience. We deserve that too. And so I've been an advocate for that, both on the internet and also through my professional organization, which is the American College of Physicians. And I participate in conferences, and I lobby Congress for bills that increase access to health care in a non-punitive manner. I'm an advocate through another organization I belong to, which is ARP, American Association of Retired Persons. They have a legislative action group, and I advocate through that legislative action group.
Moment. Along with writing a number of scholarly medical pieces, Don, you also do some novel writing. Can you tell us some about that?
I have written a lot of non-medical work that's not fiction. At least I would like to say it's not fiction. Almost everything I've written is in a peer-reviewed medical journal. So my peers have reviewed those articles and said they're good. And so I write medical fiction, and I've written 4 full, large novels, all of which take place officially in a place called Haven, New Jersey. But in actuality, they take place in Denville at the hospital there. People that know my circle of friends will recognize some of my novels, they'll recognize somebody's house or somebody's living room or somebody's the street that they're living on. Vera Martina lives on a street right across from the Rockaway Mall, so some people will recognize that place. But they're very immersive novels about bad doctors that do bad things. They're all on Amazon, and also have a book of poetry called Transit States, which is also on Kindle and Amazon.
You're still working 3 days a week, right?
Right, I do. I work 3 days a week at a clinic in Denville and Newton. I see patients that have addictive disorders, and I'm the prescribing doctor for their addiction medicine, and I also do their general health care. So, but I do spend a lot of time reading and also thinking, and I haven't written any new novels in a few years, but if I come up with a great idea, I may go back and do it.
Can you tell us a little bit about your history with the fellowship, Don? And in particular, what do you feel the fellowship has given you?
Right. Well, we've been involved in the fellowship for about 30 years, close to 30 years, because we were in the fellowship during the Paul Ratzlaff years when Paul Ratzlaff was the minister. And then we left around the time that Paul Ratzlaff left, maybe 25 years ago, I guess. Diane and I moved to Birmingham, and we were there for 14 years. And then we moved back to New Jersey about 14 years ago. And we rejoined the Morristown Unitarian Fellowship at that time. What it's given me is it's given me a chance to participate in those aspects of my life that I think are spiritual, dealing with the mystery and the uncertainty and the unknowingness of a lot of life. So being a Unitarian Universalist allows me to rejoice in the uncertainty of nature without the dogmatism of religion. Universalism, Unitarianism, there's some very straight set out tenets of our beliefs. And I think that those beliefs are pretty good. And if you can incorporate those beliefs in your life, Unitarian Universalism can give you a really good life for you and your loved ones and your children to live by. I talk about this in one of my non-medical writings. If you go onto the internet and you search Donald Harvey Marks and then put personal blog site, it'll take you there. And then you can see my article on what I haven't told my family about the meaning of time. Because in that article, I talk a lot about UUism and what exactly it means to me, and how it helps me deal with uncertainty. Is I'm okay with uncertainty, but a lot of people I know are not okay with uncertainty, and they refuse to believe that they're uncertain. I say it's not true that there's a lot you can be uncertain about, but you can be okay with uncertainty because it's part of life. I'm looking for a quote that I wanted to read to you about this, and this is a quote from the Dalai Lama. That the Dalai Lama, when asked about what surprised him most about humanity, he answered, "Man surprises me most about humanity because he sacrifices his health in order to make money. Then he sacrifices money to recuperate his health. And then he is so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present. The result being that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he's never going to die, and then he dies, having never really lived." And I don't want to be that person. Being in UU allows me not to be that person.
Would you add anything of your own life lessons that you would like to pass on to future generations or even current generations?
First of all, you can't live life alone. So to all of those people that are listening to this and they say, I'm a strong person. I have everything I need. I have money. I have property. I have a powerful position. I have my health and my youth. You can't do it alone. You need a strong person to walk the road with you. Secondly, is you need a set of principles. Okay, and you may not actually find that set of principles at a young age. It may be something you develop with, but being a UU can help you because UU has a very strong set of principles which are actually very obvious and easy to apply. You have to avoid addictions. So this means addiction to money, of course, and to addiction to drugs and alcohol, but it also means addiction to power and addiction to hate, right? Addiction to whatever it is that is self-directing. You have to avoid those addictions. So those are the main points that I want to make. You have to realize that life is uncertainty and that life is going to end for you. And eventually we're all going to be footnotes in history. And most of the time, people are not even going to talk about us a year or two after we die, possibly even sooner, depending on how liked or disliked you are. So don't think of yourself as so important that nothing else can live without you. As Charles de Gaulle said, the cemeteries are filled with the bodies of irreplaceable men. Family is the first. The second, maintaining my health, is a second concept. So being with my family, maintaining my health, contributing to society as best I can, and knowing when I've done enough and when I can't do more, which are other things to know, right? Because you may think you're capable of things, but you're not, or you're not essential. So knowing when to fold and knowing when to move on is an important thing. And I don't know if this could be number 5, right? Is trying not only to try to leave everything better than when you got there, but trying to leave your relationship with other people so it's copacetic. I've watched the other Odysseys videos in this series, and it's always so impressive to me how people have made such really great contributions in their life and influenced and touched other people. But it goes back to one of my points, is that we're not alone. Every one of the men and women in Odyssey has had many people touching their lives. We're like roots of a tree where the roots spread out and touch all the other trees and plants around them, and the soil and the air and the water, and we're all part of a bigger ecosystem, right? And so if any of us think that we're absolutely important by ourselves, is nonsense. We should revel in our abilities and be comfortable in our inabilities.